Hello, everyone. Welcome to Achieving Success with Olivia Akin. I'm your host, Olivia Akin. Each week, we will discuss the roadmap of achieving your personal and professional success. We will give you real-life stories on growing personally and professionally to achieve your life and career goals with the help of some top-notch guests. Today, we are speaking with Natasha Nurse. Natasha is a D&I specialist and HR professional. She's also an author, speaker, content creator, and the co-host of the podcast Woke and Free, which she co-hosts with her husband. Woke and Free gives you a glimpse into the minds of a couple with different takes on hot topics. You can find Natasha on LinkedIn by searching Natasha M. Nurse, or going to her website, wokeandfree.com, or by emailing her at wokeandfree@gmail.com. Hello, Natasha. It's fantastic having you on the show today.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
To start off the show, can you tell me what success means and looks like to Natasha Nurse?
Ooh, what a great question. Thank you. So success is a personal formula that has to be designed based on what you feel, how you feel aligned with society and the world at large. So for me, I would say success is impact plus education plus empathy and understanding and entertainment, because I think life is nothing without joy and fun. And then plus reflection and then legacy. And so that breaks out into your own family legacy, as well as the legacy you create and build into the others that you touch in the body of work, whatever that looks like for you.
I love that. And I love how you touched upon different aspects within that. I love the fact you brought up having fun and entertainment, because I very much feel like, especially in the place I am in life right now, that, you build a plan or you think what life might look like. And then
Yeah.
sometimes God just goes, okay, I'm going to laugh at this and let's see how you adjust. And
Yeah.
I think that's so important to understand. And sometimes I think our own circumstances in life kind of teach us those lessons that you kind of just have to laugh and enjoy the ride.
Mm.
I actually just found out this past weekend, right before our recording, that I will be moving to Alaska for 2 years.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yes. So if you had ever asked me if I was going to move out of the town that I currently live in
Oh,
New
wow.
Jersey, I would have been like, nope, this is where I am. This is where I will be. Even if my husband doesn't live here, he will be relocating.
Yeah.
And then my boyfriend, who's in the Coast Guard, got stationed in Alaska. And so now we have to relocate to Alaska for 24 months.
Oh,
So
wow.
I very much joke, and I was with my friends this weekend of they were like, we just asked you to move to Connecticut. And you 3-hour drive, right? Compared to a 13-hour
Oh,
flight.
wow.
And I said
Yeah.
that would never happen. And now look where we are.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You should never say never. And yes, life has a funny way of surprising you. But, Alaska is beautiful, and it should definitely provide certain lessons and
Mhm.
blessings in your life. That'll be an interesting shift for sure. Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I say one of the great things too is with where the show is in our listenership with the show is I get to go back and forth now for 24 months between Jersey and Alaska. And
Okay. Okay.
like you said, it's going to be an adventure, and it's
Yeah.
going to be something where I will probably be laughing a lot. For you,
Yeah.
you also brought up legacy and the
Yeah.
importance of building that legacy out
Yeah.
through your achievements. For
Hmm.
you, when you look and really dive into the word legacy, what
Hmm.
do you think of, and what is the impact you're trying to make through your legacy?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So my mom and dad are both from Kingston, Jamaica. And, if you kind of have any touch or understanding of immigrant households, that, there's a predominance of information and just like knowledge share to the first generation, which I'm part of, born here, that says like, come to America, right? Like do as much as you can and try to build and create a legacy or a life that is, that you would be proud of, that your ancestors would be proud of, but that you're able to sustain yourself and then also help your family or help loved ones and such. And so for me, when I think of legacy, I think of, what am I going to do that where when I'm no longer here, when I transition, whenever that may be, that people will think fondly of me, but think fondly and also be like, wow, my life was better because she did XYZ, or I learned to make my life better based on what she taught me. So I look at legacy through content share. I look at it also through like fundamental things that you build for people who build schools or who build institutions and businesses that again have longstanding impact. I think that's a form of legacy, but then also relationship and connection. I think people underestimate the value that we have in having a beautiful conversation with someone, having a coaching moment with someone that can really change the direction of someone's life is a form of legacy as well. So I think it's multifaceted, but I think it's important because we're here for such a short time. And so you really have to be strategic and you have to be purposeful. And I wish, sometimes it's hard with children. You want them to like really enjoy life and to have a lot of fun. But like with my own 2-year-old son, I'm like itching to be like, okay, like hurry up and figure out how to like do all this stuff, like talking and potty training and all that stuff. Cause we have to get into the hard stuff. We have to like, I want his life to be meaningful and impactful. And what does that look like for him, and spending time having fun, but also embedding in that, like, what is that? Who are you? Because I feel like for myself, I'm 37 and and I'm trying to uncover the who am I in a way that I feel like I wish I had done that as a younger person. So trying to just like make sure I course correct for my son and make sure he's very aligned with like who are you, and what is life going to mean for you, and what does impact mean for you?
I want to dive into that a little farther.
Yeah.
You just brought up a great point that a lot of us go through in life of really identifying who we are in a moment in time, but also looking back and go, "Oh, I wish I knew that earlier. Someone had
Hmm.
told me this path or whatever it might be 5, 10 years ago. I would have jumped
Yeah.
on it and would have
Yeah.
done more with it." For
Hmm.
you and where you are now, what is something you wish someone had told you or you told yourself years
Mm,
ago that, as you're saying,
mm.
you're trying to course correct now, you would have been able to start, and how would that might have looked for you?
Oh yeah, definitely. So I am a content creator now, but I wish I would have leaned into that earlier as a child because I've always been creative. I've always been writing stories, poetry, all of that stuff since I was like 6 years old. So I wish I would have believed in myself and also ignored conservative thoughts because again, Caribbean people can be very binary in that like life looks good from the perspective of being a lawyer, being a teacher, being an accountant, which I do hold some of those titles, which is cool. But ultimately, like if I was more aligned with who I am, I lean creatively. And I needed to be able to practice that artwork and that skill earlier on instead of trying to deny it for the what I should be doing versus what who you are is who you are, and you're supposed to live that truth out as soon as possible, explore it, and take it where it needs to go, not submerge it or hide it or segment it for the realities of what your parents say you should be doing or what you think you should be doing just because it's not necessarily a clear pathway. Content creation or being a creative isn't clear, but it doesn't mean that it's wrong. And I think too many people have binary focuses around what success looks like, and then they kind of put that onto their children and then prevent people from feeling like, well, maybe I could have been a dancer, or maybe I could, all these other things, these ifs, which is okay. But you should have freedom. You should parenting is about guidance, but also giving freedom. And not all people do that with their kids.
And I love how you mention the word freedom and the way you use it, of really being able to dive into who you are and accept those parts of you, but also as a parent, accepting those sides of your children and
Yeah.
saying, okay, it might not be what I imagined life
Hmm.
might be like for you or the roles. You just brought up the Jamaican culture and how they look at different roles and jobs, but that can be okay. And I think getting comfortable with the unknown is
Yeah.
sometimes needed.
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
when as a parent you get comfortable with the unknown of your child and the life that they are living, it makes them feel more understood and supported sometimes to actually come to you as well. So for you, as you had mentioned, you have different titles, you've done different degrees, different
Yeah.
journeys. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what that was like and going through your education
Yeah.
aspect?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in Manhattan in Stuyvesant Town, which was a magical place in the city. If you've never been, I always say people should visit. And then I went to so in Stuyvesant Town, there's an elementary school and junior high like right across from it. So I like walked to school for the first like part of my educational journey, and then went to high school for environmental studies, which was fun and interesting and helped kind of spark some of like my environmental passions and stuff like that, which was really great. I worked with NASA doing carbon storage research in Black Rock Forest in New York, which was a beautiful experience. And then had the wonderful opportunity to go to Penn State. I studied animal science, which because I was like, oh, I want to be a veterinarian because, I'll be a professional and I love animals. Had to dissect animals, and that was the end of that journey because I don't like cutting animals open. I prefer to play with them. So I started taking business and law classes, and that like really just opened up the idea of like, oh, well, maybe I could be a lawyer because with a law degree, you can do a lot of different things. And went to New York Law School, and I started the year that the economy crashed in '08. So it was perfect timing. And as everyone knows, there's a lawyer per every square foot of New York. And so it was super competitive when I graduated. And, from that, I do believe everything happens for a reason. So went in a non-traditional pathway. So I did everything from like legal education to sales, and then started doing consulting and blogging, which then led to me being able to coach and speak, and then podcasting. That was a creative innovation that was pretty much because me and my husband have been together since we were at Penn State, so 19 years this year, 10 years of marriage, and a 2-year-old baby later, right? And we were just tired of seeing people have conversations where people are very tribal, right? Like I'm on this side, this person's on this side. We can never speak proper to each other. We're just very angry and not just communicative, right? I think there's something really healthy about agreeing to disagree. And there's something really wonderful and productive around seeing things differently. And we were just really struggling with not seeing that in media. And then also the narrative of like Black love doesn't exist, which is like just really detrimental to the Black community in America. There's enough that we deal with on an ongoing basis. I don't think the family needs to be destroyed in a public manner. And so we were like, okay, well, we've always had really dynamic conversations. Let's have a podcast. Let's share our thoughts. We're very different. I'm very liberal and he's not. And that's awesome. And so we constantly are like, what? I feel this way. Like it's really funny. and so we do this every single week. We have started that, I think, September 2017. So it's been a while. It's been fun. And and through all of that, to answer your question, I've learned that I am the queen of pivot. I've learned that it's okay to start something and go a different direction. I've also learned the power of listening more and to yourself and understanding what are you liking. And I've seen as my career has gone and morphed in all these different ways that ultimately it's still always under the umbrella of education, entertainment, and also my ability to connect with others. Because that, if I had to have a superpower, it'd be my ability to implement, to ideate, and to connect with others and to help other people have pathways to show up in spaces stronger, more confident, and more capable. And being able to be a conduit, whether I do that through my job, whether I do that through my content, I find the greatest joy in doing that.
And I love that story. And why I wanted you to share that story is it is a pure example of the fact that pivoting is okay and going down your journey is totally fine, as well as, and you touched upon this greatly, and you even highlighted this point of you have found overarching themes in every direction you've gone into. And I think it's so important to realize that there's skill sets and tools you can learn and take into the next thing you might want to be doing. And it might look completely different, right?
Yeah.
Veterinary school compared to podcasting can look completely two
Yeah.
ends of the spectrum, right?
Yeah.
However, there are skill sets there that you need. You need to be able to listen. You need to have that empathy, especially in different conversations you're having on your podcast, of really being able to hold the conversation and move forward from it. And in, when you're in veterinary school, like you said, there's a lot of animals, and animals are people's babies.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
you have to learn those skill sets as well. I want to dive more into your podcast and content
Yeah.
creating. As
Yeah.
you began that journey and you decided to co host it with your husband,
Yeah.
who s- some people could say that can make or break a relationship, right?
Yeah.
Because now you're doing a business with your husband, but
Yeah.
you're also laying it out there in the open and saying, we're going to be transparent. We're going to
Yeah.
have these conversations and we're going to demonstrate a healthy relationship, how to do it healthy. But
Yeah.
how, as you started that journey and started it with your husband, did you say,
Yeah.
okay, this is what we're doing? We're going to be respectful. Sometimes the husband wife dynamics can get involved, but how do
Yeah.
you, through everything, try to keep it clean and respectful and
Yeah.
even decide some of your topics?
Yeah, absolutely. So what's great about podcasting together is it's an opportunity to collaborate. And for folks who are in long-term relationships, that life's right. And it gets in a way of sometimes you always making time to connect with each other, and then add on, being a parent and having to baby through COVID, right? Like there's a lot of things that pull us apart from each other, from not really being able to spend the quality time that we'd like to, because it's always baby, baby, baby. We speak more about baby stuff than we do a lot of other stuff. So it's really nice to have that beautiful space to be like, hey, let's sit down. We're going to record. We're going to talk about this. And then you have to have roles, in life, whether you are in a 500,000 organization or a two member organization. Everyone has their skill sets. Everyone knows what their thing is. And my husband's super technical and he's an engineer. And so all the technical side of the podcast, do you, boo? That's him. All the creative, like, think about this, and he taps into a little bit of this, and I'll tap into, like, oh, have we thought about this? Like, we can give each other nods within our spaces, within our roles, but distinctively own our spaces to operate and to thrive. That way you empower each other in each other's skill set. And then also people have a sense of accountability. I'm showing up knowing that I need to do this. He has to show up knowing he has to do that. And then I would say also the transparency piece is key for us. The foundation of our relationship is friendship, because when we met all those years ago, we were really honest around what we struggled with other people in our lives, which is a lack of honesty, a lack of trust and understanding. And those are the things we didn't want in our relationships. So being able to be best friends first. And I know people are like, oh, he's my best friend. Like, no, like literally, like if you were to ask me a question, I could answer on his behalf and vice versa. Like, to really know each other, not like say that after 2 years. Like, not that I'm throwing shade, but it's just, I struggle with that, Joe, because I'm like, but do you really know your partner? Okay. Uh, 19 years, it's a long time, right? It's a lot of talking. It's a lot of a lot of arguments, a lot goes on into that. But at the end of the day, like, it's our baby too, right? And it's interesting to see how it's grown, and we have a lot of fun because, like I said, we never see eye to eye on anything. And I look forward to, like, I know when he's going to say his thing, and then he knows vice versa. So it's like a reiteration, or I guess a content mirroring of our love.
One thing I enjoyed that whole thing, but there were a few pieces in there that I think are so true to what you're saying. The friendship aspect of it. So
Yeah.
we'll dive into that first. We'll go.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
think that's true. And I think sometimes when you are transparent and vulnerable, which can be difficult with a partner,
Yeah.
especially in the beginning of a relationship, I feel like even more in today's society when we're so used to having to show up in a way that others think we present
Mhm.
ourselves, right? I joke
Mhm.
that social media gives you a lot of the A-list moments and not those B and C lists. So
Yeah.
people, especially before a meeting, might look you up and they've now had preconceived notions and you feel like they might have those preconceived thoughts. So
Yeah.
now you're feeling like you have to be someone you're not. But
Mhm.
having those conversations of like, this is what I've done, this is what doesn't work. Or, you know, I'll give an example. Me and my boyfriend were talking the other night, and I'm problem solving in my head, but I'm speaking out loud, and we're trying to fix something
Mm,
for my podcast setup
mm,
at in a different location. And I just look at him like, get this. And he goes, "Mm, how did you say that?" And because I was thinking in my head of, okay, what can we place somewhere? And
mhm,
just, I'm trying to think of weird option objects to put in front of me, right? To
mhm.
center it. And I ended up reiterating it of, I'm sorry. Like after the fact, I realized I was
Yeah.
kind of starting to bark commands instead of asking for something. And we had a
Mhm,
conversation about it, and I said, it's not me disrespecting you. It's literally me in my head just going through the notions and not thinking and just
mhm,
saying. And he was like, listen, but that can lead down the line to you being like, take out the trash or do
mhm,
this. And he's like,
mhm.
that's not healthy if we keep going down that line. And so we both agreed that if that happens, we have to, on either end, acknowledge that,
Yep,
take
yep.
a beat, understand the person probably wasn't thinking and just like was
Mhm,
speaking outside their brain, as I say
mhm.
sometimes. I'm speaking out loud, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
point it out and then both work on it together.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
think sometimes that criticism too is healthy because it
Oh,
makes
yeah.
you a better person.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, one could argue that's constructive feedback. And it's important. It's important to name when things are happening and we feel uncomfortable. It's also important, like you did, though, to name why you did what you did, because a lot of times people just react to things, but it's important to understand the why, because then you can say, okay, well, as you're processing, right, maybe he can leave the room and let you process, right? And then that way it avoids because, yeah, absolutely right there with you. Like, I think a lot of people will be thinking and saying things and you aren't necessarily trying to bark at someone, but you're trying to like get like your things aligned, and the person just happens to be the receiver there. But yeah, good. That's healthy.
When you're doing your content creation, what is your
Yeah.
creation process like for the show or other
Ooh,
content that you're
yeah.
trying to create?
Absolutely. So there's one workflow or stream around the ideas or topics. And so I like to think around, I like to think about themes generally. Like in my mind, I like to think of checklists. And so, I look at every month of the year and there's something we're coming up on holiday season potentially, right? Then, okay, maybe we'll talk about this. Oh, we're thinking about summer. So I like to think thematically, but then I also like to think about what's going on in just the news. I think that there's something to be said about sharing your perspective on current day news and making it not feel like, oh, only the news channels have an opportunity to speak on it. No, you have an opportunity to speak on something too. If you get educated on it, share your piece. So I think there's that part of it. And then also just what are things happening in our household as a parent. We are dealing with potty training. We are dealing with separation anxiety. We are dealing with sleeping in your bed by yourself, right? Like all the things that happen with that. So I try to touch on personal, I try to touch on like what's going on globally, and then also just what are things that anchor around values. Those are things that attach to the work podcast kind of work stream. But then outside of that, I do like word of the day content, which is that's more, I would say, a little bit more sporadic and like something happens recently and I'm like, oh, I need to speak on this. I need to create some type of monologue around this. So I do that, but then also just thinking through like what are challenges people are facing in the work life? What are people facing and struggling with in their relationships, their friendships, things again that like I want to speak to what's in our hearts that's maybe not spoken out loud, because then that helps people feel like, oh, I'm not alone. Like someone else is going through this, right? Like, how do we deal with reality? How do we deal with fakeness? How do we deal with shade? How do we deal with sadness, with depression? Also, as a Black female, I recognize that within my narrative, there's a lot of things that our community deals with that is not spoken to. So, like, is there a space for me to tap onto that? And again, have that like connection, like, I see you, I hear you, I feel you, let's do this together, right? Like just to make people know that we're doing this autonomously, but we're also not. Like we're also like we win together, we lose together, we strive together, we hope together, we dream together, all of that.
And I think you brought up a important aspect of that, of understanding there's different ties that and avenues that bring us and make us who we are.
Mm,
But there's conversations that people want to have that just don't feel comfortable having it. And it's providing that safe space to know that you're not alone. To even if you don't have the ability or courage or whatever it might be to have that safe space to talk about, someone else will be your voice and
mhm,
understand what you're going through. For you, deciding to have some of those hard conversations, whether it's
yeah,
on a podcast, on social media platforms,
yeah,
or in your community where you know others aren't going to view it or have gone through a similar journey, right? You've
mhm,
mentioned being an African American woman. Some people, like myself, being a
mhm,
Caucasian woman, I'm not going to understand those things. But
mhm.
how do you try to have the conversation in a way where everyone can relate, or if they disagree, it be a healthy conversation?
Mm. Yeah, so I think with that, that really ties into like DEI work, generally diversity, equity, inclusion. When organizations want to invest, say, time and resources into DEI programming and stuff like that, they sometimes create it as a separate thing. But the problem with that is kind of what you spoke to before, which is the intersectionality of life, right? So, like, I show up in life, yes, as a woman, yes, as a Black person, as a professional, right? All these different hats, all the things that I do, but I can't pull them apart. They are the culmination of who I am. So when we think through safe spaces and how do we talk through uncomfortableness, we can't segment it, or put it in some dark alley room somewhere. It has to be in the forefront. It has to be in the mix of things. So when we're creating content, we need to be touching on culture. We need to be touching on the uncomfortable. When we are engaging in business, what are we doing that thinks through inclusion? Like inclusivity, DEI has to be integral in everything we're doing and everything we're communicating and the actions we're making, the decisions we're making, the ways we decide to invest. Like it just, you have to be able to speak to that. It has to be a part of everything. You can't put it to the side somewhere, or you can't ask people to be like, okay, just show up as this part of you and not the struggling part of this, or like it's just everything is you. I can't leave my culture behind. So that's why, like, even for instance, if you've ever heard the phrase like I don't see color, problematic statement, because I show up and I can't decolorize myself, right? Like I am my color, I am my gender, I am my preferences, I am everything. But what I would love and to be able to help be at the forefront of the conversation is that what, as a Black person, I struggle with showing up, and before you know my name, before you know my preferences and who I am as a person, I am Black, I am this, right? And that's what's hard, because people have unconscious bias and they make decisions around, or our thoughts and estimations around things before I even open my mouth, right? So I'd want to show up in spaces as Natasha first and foremost, who happens to be Black, who happens to be a woman, who happens to be of an immigrant family, and right? Like all the things. But that's where I think we struggle in society, in that we don't allow people to be humans. We are first boxes and then we humanize, and that's problematic. Because if we're not human first, then that's where it's easier to kill people like me. That's where it's easier to discriminate against people like me, because you don't see me as a human. You see me as the boxes that I exist within first.
For you, when you approach individuals and everyday life,
Yeah,
and there's you're juggling all these different aspects of your life, right? Motherhood, wife,
yeah,
employee, business owner,
yeah.
boss woman.
So
How do you how do you show up sometimes and communicate when you might not be showing up in a way that other people are expecting you to show up?
mm. So I first try to show up in a space of just be gratitude. I like to say gratitude is the attitude of choice, right? So I'm grateful for all spaces that I'm invited to. I don't have to be. I understand that that's a privilege, first and foremost. Your job is a privilege. You don't have to work. You choose to show up and they choose to continue to employ you, right? Like, so people need to first be grateful for for every aspect of our life, even the good, the hard and the good things. And then listen, right? Like I forget who's the originator of this phrase, but I remember when Rocky said in Creed, you have two ears and one mouth. You need to do more listening than talking. It's so true. And it works on all sides of the conversation, that like, regardless of the space, I need to hear. I need to hear what they're thinking, and I need to like take a beat sometimes, and vice versa. And then also when I am showing up and I'm saying things that maybe not in alignment with what other people need or want, explain myself, right? Not just the what of what I need to say, but why have I arrived here? And how do I make this okay? And is it okay to show up in space and people are uncomfortable? Yes, right? Human beings only grow when we're uncomfortable. We don't grow when we're comfortable. So overall, like the more spaces that we can be in that make us uncomfortable as people, the more that we can flex and stretch and grow. And then maybe the next time you experience that, you'll be a little bit less uncomfortable. Maybe you'll feel a little bit more confident. So, the best way through something is literally through it. You can't get around it. You just got to go through it. And then you learn and you grow, and we give each other grace as people. People are so quick to judge and so quick to dismiss and to cancel, right? But we have to give each other grace, and we have to understand no one's ever going to say the right thing all the time. But what's their heart? What are they trying to accomplish? And be clear about objectives. That's the other thing. Sometimes people just talk for talk's sake. What are you trying to achieve, right? In this space, what do we want out of this? And then set that at the onset, and then at the end, did we achieve this? And if we didn't, why? And then what are we going to do next time?
I love how you brought up there as well the importance of communication and explanation.
Mm-hmm.
You really need to explain sometimes both sides of it. You can be explaining why it needs to be done a certain way, but
Mm-hmm.
also take the moment to step back, listen to the
Mm-hmm.
individual who's explaining, and that
Mm-hmm.
individual actually needs to explain why they've done it a certain way. As you brought up earlier, and the theme of this show today is really having those conversations and showing up and being transparent as you show up.
Yeah.
So even if it's uncomfortable, you need to have your voice and use your voice.
Mm.
And that is key. Natasha, how can people get in touch with you if they want to connect with you?
Yes, thank you so much. I would love for everyone to check out the podcast. I think that would be the best way for them to understand a little bit more about me, as well as my hilarious and very educational and entertaining platform. So again, wokenfree.com, WOKENFREE.com. And then you said earlier, I'm on LinkedIn. I always love new connections. So Natasha M. Nurse, you'll find me. And yeah, and then, just listen in, tune in, subscribe, and ask questions. I think some of the best things that we can do ever in life is just really to ask, like, do you understand? If you don't understand, or if you have a comment, like, let's talk, right? I'm all about conversations.
Thank you, Natasha, for all of your insight today.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
A few of our key takeaways from today's conversation are live your truth out and don't try to submerge it. I think it's so important to give yourself air and not try to basically waterboard yourself into not doing what makes you happy or not experiencing things. And you touched upon this, and it will be in one of another statement I make, but getting uncomfortable and understanding that life is entertainment and joy. And the more you push back, it's only going to hurt you in the long run. Because, like Natasha says herself, she submerged her creative side, and look where she's sitting now, right? As well as working with a spouse gives you the opportunity to connect and collaborate. I love that piece that Natasha shared because it is so true. Life gets busy, and sometimes with this spouse, like Natasha brought up, baby talk all the time. You have 100 different things going on. But when you get to work with a spouse, whether it's in a job role, owning your own business, or going, you know what, let's work through some Legos together or a puzzle. Maybe you're not working together, but there's activities you could do to actually set yourself aside a time to just bond, collaborate, and work together. And it gives you the ability to ultimately connect more and connect on different levels, as well as we are a collaboration of all aspects of our lives. So when you show up and you expect someone to show up, understand they're bringing all pieces of their lives together, as well as all the things that make them who they are through the experiences that they have. So be open to that, as well as be open to having those different experiences at the table, because it can give you answers and perspectives you never thought you could have. As well as it is a problem when you are box first, then we humanize an individual. Humanize first and then look at the boxes. I think that was one of my favorites from today, as well as we only grow when we are uncomfortable. Put yourself in more of those uncomfortable positions and you will become more comfortable the next time. This was a great episode with our top-notch guest, Natasha Nurse. Thank you for listening and have a successful day.